Welcome back to Series 2, Lesson 2 of the Basic Woodturning 101 series. Last week, we roughed out this piece of wood. We used our spindle roughing gouge. We then went to the skew chisel to plane it. I hope you've been practicing. I recognize that roughing was probably easier than planing. The problem with planing is we go from here to our cut, and we've got to be sure we don't go beyond that point. Lock the body, move as a unit. More practice, keep it up. This week I want to introduce you to the last two of the four basic spindle turning tools. I'm also going to introduce you to the concept of taking measurements and sizing things to dimensions by introducing you to calipers. There's two different kinds. Either one will work. Get my ruler and pencil, or as we actually call it, a scale. It's nice to have one of these because it not only allows us to transfer measurements, but it has a square corner on either end, and at later points in time, being able to check something for absolute squareness, it's going to be really, really useful to be able to do that. When you buy calipers, if you buy this type of dial caliper, do not buy a pair of plastic ones, because many times we're going to transfer dimensions to the wood by scratching it with the metal fingers. Excuse me for forgetting a term. If you buy this kind of caliper, these will be sharp, so they need to be filed and rounded down so they will not dig in to the wood and grab. So the first tool, I'm going to keep these right here at hand, we're going to introduce you to is the parting tool. Another double-edged tool, but a very easy one to use. It's a tool that's many times misused. A lot of people will take the tool, push it straight into the wood, and while it tears out fibers, that's not what we want it to do. This is a bevel on both sides, and remember, we want to rub the bevel against the wood and then raise the handle to start and complete the cut. Now this tool, as it cuts in, I'm going to have to remember to keep advancing the tool as the spindle gets smaller. Let me show you on the end of this piece what I mean by that cut. Did you catch it? What did I forget to do? I set my tool rest, I set my speed all off camera ahead of time, but forgot to check for clearance between the tool rest and the workpiece. So that was a mistake. Hope you caught that. Tool against the wood. I raise the handle till the cut starts. We do that again. Now, my tool rest moved on me a little bit. I'll retighten it. And I'm going to do the same cut again. Anchor the tool. Drop the bevel. Cut starts. I'm going to advance the tool and lift my hand. It's that kind of a motion. So, what's a parting tool for? Well, I can part off the wood, cut it completely through. In this case, being held between centers, I don't want to do that, it'll go flying. I can also use it to transfer specific dimensions, and I can transfer it at specific points. Imagine that you're making a chair leg, and you want to hit 4 of them alike each other. So that means you're going to need to transfer dimensions before you start the cuts. And this is the tool used in conjunction with a pair of calipers will allow you to do that. Well, I'm going to use it today to set up for introducing the next tool, and that is the shallow fluted gouge. But I'm going to want to cut a bunch of grooves along here. It'll make my demonstration of the next tool a little simpler. So I'm going to use my scale, put a mark about every inch, notice I didn't touch this against the wood. I didn't get them accurate, but I didn't care. And I used a pencil, I drug it on the back edge so that it was trailing. If I raised the pencil into the wood, it would be a catch, like we talked about with the tools last video. But I don't want that. So I've got some marks. I would like to reduce the diameter of this at these marks to 1 inch. So I set my calipers to 1 inch. I could have measured it off of the scale. And what I'm going to do is use the calipers and the parting tool to reduce this to 1 inch. Now I've rounded these corners off so I don't expect it to catch. I know that the parting tool is wider than these so they will not bind, but I'm going to make 2 cuts. I'm going to make 1 cut, and I'm going to pull the tool out, and I'm going to come over half a tool width and make a second cut so that I have plenty of clearance and no possibility of this tool binding. Let me show you one, and then we'll talk about it a second time. Now, what did I do? First of all, to handle the calipers, I needed this second hand free. So I've got this tool held in my right hand here, fingers along the shaft, and the handle's up against my wrist. This makes a very rigid presentation of this tool, something I can do with one hand. Leaves this hand free to test with the calipers. I'm also not pushing these things over the wood because this will spring and give me a false reading. Let me do one more, and then watch for how I'm holding the tool and how I'm manipulating the caliper. Start. Overlap. Check. Done. So after I did the first one and the second one, it was interesting to know that I can actually eyeball to tell when I'm getting reasonably close. Take it down to about the right dimension, excuse me, and then slip the calipers over. And I could go on down, but 3 of these will be enough for me to begin to show you the next tool. But this is a critical tool on any time we're turning something to a dimension. So you need to learn to use it early, and you'll find using it is a very simple thing to do. I'm getting not curls, but I am cutting the fibers of the wood, and I'm getting long stringy pieces. I do not get a very clean edge on either side because I'm cutting across the fibers and kind of tearing a little bit at the surface. So it's not a clean cut. You can probably see it on this end one the easiest. There's fibers torn here. There are ways to eliminate that, and I'll show you that in a later lesson. The parting tool. They come in a lot of different shapes and sizes. This particular one is kind of diamond shaped. Goes out and then back in, so the fattest portion is right at the cutting edge. The idea is that as I go in, the body of the tool won't bind in a deep cut. That's a good theory, and in general it works, but I also want to prevent that by widening this cut by 1.5 tools. That helps an awful lot to be able to do that. So what I'm going to end up doing is now show you where I'm going to go next. I want to introduce you to the shallow fluted gouge. And by that I mean a tool designed specifically for spindle work. And what I have done now is pulled out 2 gouges. The one on your right side is the shallow fluted or spindle gouge. The one on your left is the deep fluted or bowl gouge, a tool that we will not be using in this series of lessons, but reserved for our next series. The difference is not only size and mass, but the shape of the flute is different. This is a fairly open flute, allows me to turn the tool and cut with all the edges. The bowl gouge is a fairly closed flute. As a result, it doesn't turn beads and coves very well. In fact, it's very difficult. So we're not going to use this tool. If you have a full set of 5 tools, be sure that you're starting the spindle activity that we're starting now with the correct tool, not the bowl gouge. One of the prime uses of this is for turning beads and digging out coves. A bead is just more than a regular symmetrical bump. But unfortunately, it's probably the most difficult single individual cut that you'll have to learn. And here it is right in the first series. I know, but that's the way it is. And so you'll need a lot of practice to get this down, because you need to get these motions together. There is a turning motion, there is a fanning motion, and there is a raise motion. All 3 have to happen together in order to create that bead shape. So, here's a silly exercise, but it's one that really does help. Pretend that your finger is your gouge. Put it on your tool, rest, and recognize that one of the things you have to do is this rotation. And as you see, with my index finger extended, the rotation is right up here at my wrist. The second thing I have to do is add to that a fanning motion, moving towards the tailstock. And as I rotate and fan my hand, you notice something else is happening. My whole body is beginning to be part of that motion, so it becomes part of a rocking motion. So you need to practice this so that I can rotate my finger 90 degrees and fan my hand over 90 degrees. Now, if I just stick that tool in my hand, pretty much got that same motion, but this thing's bouncing all over the place. So I have to engage this hand, something to keep this steady. Now I've got a system going. And practice this a bunch until it begins to feel somewhat comfortable. I know it's going to take a while. Also notice that I've got my index finger on top. If I grab the tool like this, I'm limiting my ability to move freely. Index finger on the top when I turn to the right. Index finger on the right side when I'm turning to the left. It keeps my wrist free to easily rotate. Go to the book, you'll see pictures of each of these holds, and on our second camera shot, you'll be able to see these motions much more clearly. So let's turn some beads. In order to turn a bead here, I need a little clearance on either side so that I can finish this without running into a bunch of junk wood. So that's why I dug these grooves. A bead is symmetrical. So that means that I should turn the same amount on both sides. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a pencil mark in each of these, someplace near the center. And my goal now is to turn the right side of this bead, several of them, and then turn the left-hand side. Now, I'm moving away from my body with my right hand. To start, I would suggest the right side done with the right hand and the left side done with the left hand. Because if I come around on the left side, I have me in the way of free movement of the handle. So I've either got to stand way back, which is not good control, or I'm going to have to find some way to work around my body being in the way. There are ways. But let's do it this way. Right hand, right side, left hand, left side. So let me show you my process for getting that bead turned. I'm going to start pinching the tool with my left hand. That controls the tip so they go flopping around. And it also allows me to move laterally. My right hand's going to rotate and fan. I'm going to be down on the tool rest. My thumb is keeping this tool from moving too much in the wrong places, and it's going to allow me to move. I'm not going to turn the bead in one step. I'm going to take a corner off. Then I'm going to take a little bit bigger cut and a little bit bigger cut until I get down to, but not including, the pencil line. Let me show you. Pinch, index on top. Oh, that's fine. Next one's a little bigger. Each time I'm moving back towards the center farther and towards that direction farther. One more cut on this side. Now, what did I just do? I made a series of cuts. Little ones, bigger ones, bigger ones. The other thing I did was work very slowly. I know you've seen YouTube videos and demonstrations perhaps where a person comes with a zip zip, got the bead done. Well, that's fine if you have the experience, but as new turners, you've got to watch your hand motions, you've got to watch the wood, and you've got to get this brain engaged in saying, oop, move slower, turn more, turn less, whatever. So what I'm going to do is show you on the bead we just turned. The bevel is against the wood. As I come around this side, that bevel is still against the wood, all the way down here to the bottom. If you have a bead that looks like this, with a flat surface, maybe at a 45-degree angle or so, whatever, the problem is you're not rotating the tool. So look at the work you do. If it looks like that, that means the movements are there. If it looks like this, it means that there's no rotation. Remember, you're turning away from the shape of the bead. The moment you turn the tool the opposite direction, you'll end up with a very interesting, unplanned shape. Perhaps even one of those things are called a catch. Well, maybe I can fix this. Let's see. Back up to the top. Rotate, 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 fan, rotate, push with my left thumb. So I'm going in, I'm rotating, I'm fanning, and meanwhile with this hand I'm pushing. Now, I could say that's all there is to it, and that's really true. It is all there, but it's the most complicated set of motions that you're going to have to make. And what you're going to have to do is plan to do lots of these. Back to that 2x4 I talked to you about in the last lesson. Cut up a piece, rough it out, plane it down, lay out, turn a bunch of beads. Look at them. Do they have the symmetry you want? If not, then turn some more. And turn this thing down and then smooth it out and do it all over again, because this will require more practice than about anything. Turning a bead. One more. Corner. Bigger cut. Bigger cut. Slowly does it. Roll the tool around and down to the bottom. So this is where I ended up. Rotated over 90 degrees. I started here. I ended up there. The other side, exactly the same. I'm suggesting left-handed for this cut. I tend to be right-handed. I write right-handed. I do a lot of things with my right hand. But many times I can make cuts more accurately with my left. And I don't really know the reason for that other than the fact that maybe my mind is more connected with making my hand do what I want it to. And my right hand goes on to automatic too easily. So you may find your less dominant hand provides you with better results. Or not. Just kind of depends. Well, those are beads. That's part one was the grooving. Part two was turning the bead. Number three, the other side of this tool. Rotating a bead, a bump. The other one is digging out a groove or a gouge or a cove. We call it a cove. Let me show you on the other half what a cove looks like. Let me move the tool rest down. Clear the decks. A cove is just a scooping. And I'm going to start with the tool on its side so I can engage this cutting edge. And I'm going to scoop down to the bottom. And when I'm at the bottom of this cove, the tool is going to be aiming straight up again. So I'm going to start here and scoop. And on the other side, start here and scoop. Notice on the right-hand side, and my finger here, and on the left-hand side, I moved my finger to make my wrist easily turn. Now, what is this like? I can give you an analogy. If you get that quart of ice cream out of the freezer and it's hard, and you go into your utility drawer and you pull out a spoon, and you want to cut out a little bit of ice cream, put in your bowl, you're going to start with the edge of that spoon, dig down in there, get that ice cream. It's exactly the same motion. Now, I prefer you to practice with the shallow fluted gouge and a piece of wood rather than a quart of vanilla ice cream. The other one may be more satisfying, but this teaches you more. Okay? Let me show you a couple of coves. I'm going to go from here to here. Other side. Now, I did it two different ways. On this side, I started here at the edge and worked my way all the way across. On the left side, I took it out in little steps. Either way works. Now, you also saw, on my first cut or two, some squirrely little lines here, because I didn't have that tool all the way up on the edge and catch this edge onto the wood, and this thumb wasn't holding that tool. So it should be like this. I went backwards, I left a little bit of a bump in there. Now I'll do the other side, same, a little bit. One more cut back to the pencil. They don't match. So I came over and made one more cut. Now, when you finish your cove, that tool will be in that flute vertical position. And I finish in the center. I do not start going up the other side. If I go up the other side, I'm going to be cutting what we say against the grain. Remember, in spindle work, we're always trying to cut downhill to the grain, which means toward the center of our piece of wood. So this is fine. Down to here, the moment that's here, I've got to go to the other side and do it. The only difficulty, and it's not a big one, is getting the two sides to match. So again, I'm taking light cuts, I'm taking easy cuts, and another cut to practice with our shallow fluted gouge. By going slow and light, what did I just do? I'm talking to you and I'm not paying attention to my cut. And my tool is there, not down here. So as a result, the edge engaged the wood and it wanted to spiral back this way, like an ice skate. I did not have the tool over far enough and I wasn't paying close attention. So I'll clean that up. By getting the tool all the way over, coming slowly down towards the center, finishing the cut off the other side. So, lesson there is not only doing the cut, but if that tool does not start in the right place, off a little bit, we can get a run back, which is what happened to me because I was there and not down here. Okay. Your homework assignment, if you choose to take it, like they say in Mission Impossible. Get another piece of that 2x4 up between centers, take your parting tool, cut some equally spaced grooves to a specific depth. Use calipers to set them so you get in the practice of doing that. Mark the centers of those spots and then turn a whole string of beads. One side. And then come over and turn the other side to that same string of beads. Clean it up, do it again. So today we introduce you to the last of our four major tools, the parting tool and the shallow fluted gouge, which is many times called the spindle gouge. In our next lesson, we're going to start applying some of these tools to a project that allows us to introduce other ways of holding things on the lathe. And each of the preceding lessons in this series is going to show you more information on how to hold and manipulate things on the lathe using the same four tools. You want to know more about the parting tool and its sharpening and its use, or the shallow fluted gouge and its use, take a look at this little icon, this little eye on the upper right hand corner of your screen, and if you click on that, it'll take you to the two videos that give you much more detail about these two tools. I hope you're continuing and practicing, and we'll see you in the next lesson. Thanks.